So good afternoon and welcome. The Able Trust is really pleased to have you here this afternoon for our event, and we're happy that you've chosen to join us. My name is Allison Chase. I'm the Vice President at the Able Trust, and I'll be your host this afternoon. Here at the Able Trust, we're dedicated to creating employment opportunities for Floridians with disabilities, as well as supporting and advancing the mission of the Florida Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. The Able Trust was created by the Florida legislature 30 years ago in 1990. And in the past 30 years, we've partnered with thousands of organizations, which include many of your own, as well as other businesses and individuals to create a stronger, more diverse and inclusive workforce in Florida. Empowerment, education, and employment are the drivers of all of our activities, all of our partnerships, all of our grants, and all of our programs. In the past 30 years, the Able Trust has provided over $42 million in direct grants over the years. This has been made possible by the generosity of the state of Florida, other foundations, community leaders, and individuals that have decided to invest in the future of Florida by supporting career development and employment placement for individuals with disabilities. To find out how you can also make an investment in the future of Florida, we invite you to join us online at www.abletrust.org. You can also connect with us on Twitter at AbleTrust, on Facebook at The Able Trust, and LinkedIn at the-able-trust. If you have any questions or would like to share what's working for you in your community, we invite you to contact us at info@abletrust.org. We'd love to hear from you. Today, we invite you to tweet about this discussion to us at Able Trust during our conversation this afternoon. We have 3 hashtags for your tweets: hashtag TalkTime, hashtag IamAble, and hashtag Employment for All. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Guinevere Crum, who will be leading our discussion today. Guinevere is a Senior Vice President at the Able Trust and has been providing important work for our organization for over 20 years. Many of you already know Guinevere through her support of your own organization's work in advancing employment for people with disabilities. She's considered an expert in disability employment grant making and enjoys sharing her wisdom with disability service providers throughout Florida and the country. I know she's going to lead us in a very valuable discussion this afternoon, and with that, I will hand it over to Guinevere.
All right, thank you. Just had to unmute myself. There we go. Welcome, everyone. We are so pleased that you could join us this afternoon. We have participants from community organization, vocational rehabilitation personnel from across Florida, the nation, representatives from Florida's governing councils, associations, personnel from school districts, businesses, and foundations, community foundations. There's just so many people that have gathered here today, and we're really excited that you all are here for this discussion today about building organizational capacity to accomplish mission. Capacity building are those things which are needed to bring a nonprofit to the next level of operational, programmatic, financial, and organizational maturity. It is a strategic effort to elevate the organization to accomplish the mission. Capacity building is not a one-time effort to improve short-term effectiveness, but a continuous improvement strategy towards the creation of a sustainable and effective organization now and in the years to come. So those of you that participated in the pre-webinar survey got a chance to watch this short video story from this gentleman, Michael Nesmith. In the video, he shared about working at Amazon, the accommodations he has there, and just in general about how he feels about working. And I shared this video in the survey because of what he said. And I encourage anyone who hasn't yet seen it to look it up on YouTube or go directly to that blog.aboutamazon.com site and give it a listen. In the video, it narrates, speaking from Michael, and he says that he wishes he could go back and tell himself just 5 years ago, this is where he would be. That is a powerful statement. It is a statement about the deep change for a person And the question arises, how do we, all the organizations on this call, also bring about deep change for the individuals that we are working with? Are the people that we are working with right now going to feel that they were better off in 5 years? Are we reaching them with the right training? Are we preparing them for the jobs that will be available? Capacity building and organizational strengthening are long-haul approaches. When external forces are rapidly changing, like the pandemic, organizations are at risk for not performing at their optimum best. Pivoting quickly and ramping up responses to the external change is a short-term, adrenaline-charged response that must be done, but we can't lose sight of the long-term outcomes and ask ourselves, how do we push what we do? What is possible? How do we operate so that the people we work alongside, that we promote, that we believe in, will have success this year and next year and the year after? How are we optimized to make a difference? Challenges have always been present. Unemployment numbers for persons with disabilities as a subset have always been higher than the population at large. External change, such as the impact of COVID, has added another layer and driven unemployment numbers higher across the board. The numbers are large, the challenge is acute, the unemployment numbers are steep for everyone. For organizations like us gathered on the call today, this chart is ringing loud bells with several announcements. One, how do we close the persistent gap? It has been present and persistent for years and continues on now during our rapidly changing new normal. The barriers that have been there continue to be there and will continue to undermine our efforts unless we grow our capacity to address the barriers. We can't let up on the dialogue for an inclusive and diverse workforce. Two, how do we meet the challenge of the large unemployment numbers during rapidly changing times? Are we offering the tools to success that are relevant to the job openings? You'll see there the cartoon explosion up there. That is the new unemployment numbers, but you'll also see that individuals with disabilities are still tracking higher. So the red line at the bottom of the graph line is the unemployment rate. And above that, the blue line, the unemployment rate for those 16 and older with a disability. And it's persistently tracking higher. And there are barriers that represent that middle space that we need to address. The other thing that this graph really brings home for me is three, how do we acknowledge the people with disabilities unaccounted for in this graph? I think we all know someone that is disconnected from services. Are we reaching and including all the people in our communities that have disabilities or a family member with a disability? How are programs and services reaching the audiences in need? When we look at the footprint of opportunity in Florida, what are the communities that might be at the edge of that, and how do we reach them? Pull them in from those edges and be part of the workforce. The ability to push forward, to create change, accomplish mission, drives our organizations. The ability of our organizations to accomplish mission comes from the capacity building our organizations have invested in. The strengthening for the organizations to be relevant in easier times and during great internal and external changes, such as the pandemic. These 5 items that are on screen are critical to organizations. The order displayed here is the ranking that those of you that participated in the pre-webinar survey gave to each category. These items are the bedrock of our organizations, from which the programs and the goals repel out. Each category informs the other and is dependent on the other. Funds, donations, contracts, and grants are naturally at the top of everyone's minds. and it rose to the top of this list as well. But all the money in the world won't accomplish the mission if the other items in bold, networking, equipment, needs assessments, human resources, aren't also lined up. It takes the right staff with the right equipment and training opportunities for clients that will meet the needs that have been accessed in the community and in collaboration with that community to find success. Those training opportunities need to match the available job opportunities. And those opportunities are with a capital O, promoted and supported for all involved. So we need to tap in to all of these. When you consider expanding capacity for services and programs to meet the challenges of our new normal, all 5 of these key ingredients need to be addressed and supported in the development work. As you consider expanding capacity to meet the new needs of our time, we need to remember the persistent barriers that have dogged our work in the field. We are still carrying those into the new normal. We have challenges brought on by a pandemic, but we are still carrying forward those barriers that have persisted over time. The ability to strengthen our organization to address those barriers, and by deepening the strategies across the key ingredients, will bring us to a better tomorrow. So today we're going to hear from all of you in the audience, but we are also going to hear from a couple organizations about what they are currently doing to strengthen their organizations and grow capacity to meet need. Allison, our host, will unmute Anthony Iannone from the CIL in Jacksonville, who is going to talk about the extensive networking that the CIL has done to drive opportunities in Duval County. Allison, do we have Anthony's line?
I think we do.
Yep.
Hey,
Great.
welcome,
Hello
Anthony.
all. Hello all. As you heard, my name is Anthony and I'm from CIL Jacksonville. And to touch on a few things as it relates to our networking, the first thing we want our networking to be is efficient. We don't want it to take more of our time, resources than it would justify. The second thing we want is for our networking to be targeted. And I think targeted is the best word, but the reason we want to target it is because we want it to be effective and meaningful to the person that receives it. We don't want to send you something that you don't benefit from. How do we do that? What are 2 of the major tools that we use? Well, we use customized contact lists that include email, phone, text if possible. And we also use video conferencing. Now, I'll talk for just a short while on who we use those tools with and how. We have really kind of 3 categories. We have corporate relationships, we have vocational rehab and peer groups, and then we have our consumers. When we're dealing with our corporate relationships, some examples are Microsoft Corporation, and the Chamber of Commerce. What do we hope to gain from our partnership? Well, we want to be able through them to either expand our own resources that we can provide or sharpen our resources, better our resources. Some examples would be Microsoft has been kind enough to provide for us some online training classes. They use Microsoft Teams, but they've been able to provide our consumers and our staff some training on the Microsoft Office products, which really is a good resume builder and tools that we would love for our consumers to have. The Chamber of Commerce, they have provided some financial support and been able to do some things for us as it relates to transportation. And then also we want to work with local employers. Some examples of that would be maybe Pitney Bowes, who has been a really good resource for us as it relates to employment. What we do with those items is we have an email list and we customize it. We want to be able to send information to people who it's meaningful for. So for example, we will send invites to classes through our customized email list that will go to all of our consumers. We also have those lists go to VR counselors who we feel like might be interested, as well as some collaborating that we've done with other CILs through an employment roundtable. We want to use the email or contact lists to get the information out there. And then we want to use the video conferencing when everybody can come together to provide that, to provide whatever it is that we've communicating. Mostly in this case for consumers, it would be training. For some other folks, it might be just some information on what programs we're doing or maybe who we have available to work. So that in a nutshell is what we do. We want it to be effective and targeted. We use customized contact lists and video conferencing, and we try to make sure that our corporate, voc rehab, and peer and consumer relationships all benefit from that.
Thank you, Anthony. And that's really a great really summary of what we've been talking about. So they're using communication tools. They're looking at that at a really knowledge-based center, and really knowledgeable about what their community needs, both for the clients, but for the employers as well. And they're connecting with those folks. So they're really touching in on some of those key ingredients, and that's communication and networking, program assessment, community assessment, and using the tools of our time, right? The virtual meeting space and tapping into new partners. So I appreciate you joining with us and sharing all of that. We are also need to touch on needs assessments and keeping connected to research and assessments that others are completing, and that will inform the direction and work of your organization. And it's important to remember that you don't have to lead the research yourself. It can be a bit overwhelming, and you can tap into what others are learning and sharing to expand your knowledge. I'm now going to call on Tony Carvajal, our President and CEO here at the Able Trust, to introduce us to a recent report from the Kessler Foundation on college graduates with disabilities and that ADA generation, as well as research from the Florida Chamber on poverty. So, Allison, do we have Tony's line?
Guinevere, sounds like I'm live here, and you know that if I have a microphone, I'm going to do a little bit more than what you asked me to. And I just want to start by thanking you and everybody who has helped along the webinar series that you've had over the last month. Lots of great information, and folks like Anthony and the CILs around the state who have made my transition here into the Able Trust so much easier. And I love that we're talking about things like communications and marketing and engagement and research and fundraising needs and volunteers and how to connect with our clients, our consumers, our communities, our employers. You probably will recall that last week, Nicole Washington and I reviewed trends and issues on the webinar that we hosted last week. And that conversation is archived on the website at abletrust.org. If you missed it and would like to see it, you can go back there. We continue to try and make sense of the evolving landscape. This month, the Kessler Foundation released their National Employment and Disability Survey, which is what's highlighted here on the screen. You can find out more details by going to kesslerfoundation.org. That's Kessler, K-E-S-S-L-E-R, foundation.org, and read their findings. I'm not going to do it justice by just highlighting a few points, but there were a few things that dovetailed so well into from the conversation that we had last week. Continuing education, for example, and career preparation works. The survey pointed out that recent college grads that had continuing education and career preparation work were employed at about the same rates, regardless of whether they identified with a disability or not. Their survey also highlighted that career preparation activities like internships and career counseling services and paid employment while folks are continuing their educations or their career preparation leads to the individuals being more likely to work after the graduation from either the program or the degree program. This is a great moment to provide kudos to each of you at the community rehabilitation providers or at Division of Vocational Rehab, or any of the partners that are focusing on getting Floridians with disabilities to work. What you do works. That's the key. There were some concerns that were highlighted in the Kessler survey that I just want to highlight. If you recall last week, Nicole and I discussed how the COVID situation in particular, but unemployment more broadly over the years, was being impacted. And we specifically spent some time talking about the jobs more vulnerable to be disrupted during this COVID-19 situation. You might recall that things like those jobs with lower pay, or that had less specialized training or advanced degree needs, or those jobs that had higher contact with the public, or were transactional in nature, were very likely to be disrupted during the work that we're in. I think that is something that we're going to have to keep watching for a little while as this coronavirus situation continues. But it does bring into question some of the broader things that we need to be looking at in terms of employment. The Kessler study highlighted one item that we discussed last week in particular, and that is that there are going to be some jobs and some industries that are much more resilient for the long term. And if there was anything when I read the findings here that concerned me, was that persons with disabilities were less likely to have majored in the STEM field. That's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And those are identified as the growing sectors of tomorrow. So we're probably going to have to look at that a little bit deeper, not only to find out how we're directing folks into their educational paths, but what the consequences of being excluded from some of those programs might be. So let me just say, you should read the report. Again, you can go to kesslerfoundation.org to find out more. But I also want to ask you to help me. If you have resources like this survey or other studies that you have done or come across with at the local level, at the national level, anything that you use to guide your day in and day out decisions, please share it with us. We're updating our resources and tools here at the Able Trust, and we want to make sure that we're not only making informed choices, but that we're sharing this across all of those partners that are helping persons with disabilities find meaningful and sustainable employment. Before we go to the next slide, I just want to highlight that we're also doing some of our own research. And later on, you might hear a bit about a poll that we are going to put into the field for this next month, asking business leaders and community organizations what the employment opportunities are for persons with disabilities in the current environment we have and what they foresee into the future. If you want to work together on this, if you are willing to share this with your partners, I'd love to tell you more about this. And actually, let me just say right now, you should be looking for an email probably next week so that you can direct some folks into that survey. We'll use the information for one of our upcoming webinars and share the details. And I'm very interested in sharing those details with the media. So just wanted to give you an example of some of the things that we're paying attention to. If you've got research like the Kessler Foundation's studies, please share them with us. I do want to just take another minute, and Guinevere, if you'll advance the slide, I want to talk a bit about, some of you asked me about the Florida Chamber Foundation, and that's probably because you were aware that I used to be the executive vice president there. And at my time there, I looked at a lot of issues that are related to employment opportunities across the state and the talent wars in particular. But we did dive into the prevalence and issues related to the employment of persons with disabilities. You can still find at the floridachamber.com site some of the reports that we did. For example, a study of employment of Floridians with disability, which estimated the populations around the state and where they, not only where they were located, but some of the broader information related to individuals with disabilities that were looking for employment. As a special bonus, if you go to the floridachamber.com site, you'll get to see my friend Whitney Harris' video there. And all you have to do is go down to floridachamber.com, Foundation tab, then go down to research and look up the reports, and you'll find some details there, as well as that video I just mentioned. What was cool, and the reason I'm even mentioning this right now, is the work that we did in the research project of looking at employment of Floridians with disabilities has translated into broader areas. And what you see here on the screen is some information related to what the Chamber Foundation released recently. And it has much more to do with the question of poverty and prosperity. The work that we did started being broken down into much more micro and community level data. And you can find some of that at the floridascorecard.org. County data on talent and poverty and a number of different issues. I highlight this because one of the other conversations that we want to be paying attention to is about prosperity for Floridians with disabilities, not just employment, but the overall prosperity question. And not at a general level, but truly understanding it at the community and individual level. The Prosperity Initiative that the Chamber Foundation is working on is interesting from the perspective that they've broken down poverty at the zip code level. And some of the stories that we find out there is that poverty isn't equally distributed across the state. It is concentrated and focused in certain area. And there are factors that contribute. The root causes being summarized in 10 factors. You'll recognize them because it's the work that we do day in and day out, right? It's employment and issues related to education and housing and transportation and healthcare and caregivers and food and safety and justice and agency, you know, that ability for individuals to advocate for themselves. If these sound familiar to you, it's because you have been part of the cutting edge on what the rest of the world is catching up on, which is how do we measure and address the root causes that are either going to cause success for individuals or continue to lead to barriers. Well, my past work has been exciting. I'm really interested in the work that I'm doing here at the Able Trust and continuing the mission that you all have been working with. So I look forward to connecting with you and others, provide the insights and suggestions on solutions that are working so that we can cascade that around the state. There are targeted projects that we're working on that I'm really excited about. That's probably too soon to mention, and somebody's going to yell at me later for even bringing it up, but we're looking to work side by side with you, embedding ourselves in your community so that together we can work with populations that are either identified with disabilities or help find other individuals that might need some access. And we'll be building out the ABLE network, which is a business leadership and exchange network, working more closely with you and with businesses to make sure that there are employment opportunities. But I want to extend an invitation. If you are a partner, a community organization, a funder, or a business on this call, and you want to find out how you can truly make a difference, particularly in these crazy days, I want to talk to you. So reach out to me and we'll share the information after this. So Guinevere, I may have gone a little longer than you needed, but I'm very excited about the work that you're doing and the team here is doing, and look forward to connecting with everybody that's on this call.
Oh, not too long at all, Tony. Thank you so much. And you can see that the wealth of data and how it can inform your path forward. So it's a really important piece to growing capacity. And as Tony highlighted there, we grow our capacity with data by networking together. So send us what you know, and we're going to share what we know, and we'll get stronger together. So I wanted to highlight another organization that really came to my mind right away when I was thinking about sharing about organizational capacity with you all. And this organization has really put all the pieces together over time. I first visited with this program just over a decade ago, and they were in a small second-story suite in a really small building. And when I went inside their offices, it was just a few rooms of office space, and they had tape, set about the carpet to delineate the different functions of the organization. And they were literally at capacity in their physical space, but they had tremendous community needs. Their vision to network and secure funding and tapping into volunteers and staffing and the
I'm
individuals
here. Oh.
and the individual members themselves as they've grown. So, and now they're in a larger building. But Deborah has grown the capacity yet again, and I'm going to let her tell that story because she does this so well. So I'd like to introduce everybody to Deborah Webb, and I think I heard you online.
Yeah, my laptop, I guess I lost connection, so I'm now on my cell phone.
Perfect.
Sometimes, so I didn't know if I was interrupting or what, but I'm Deborah Webb, and I want to thank very much Guinevere and the Able Trust and Tony, welcome to the Able Trust, for supporting the Key Clubhouse over the years. They've been a big part of our ability to build capacity. As Guinevere was introducing our organization, our building of capacity as it relates to our physical facility became very critical in the last 2 to 3 years because our membership was growing so rapidly. Now, we're in Miami-Dade County, and the Key Clubhouse helps people with severe mental illnesses find employment and go back to school and develop new friendships and socialize with one another, as well as housing. Our situation was that we were in a very small space, only 2,200 square feet. And in Miami-Dade, for those that are on the call that are from Miami-Dade, you know that housing is a major problem. It's a major problem for everybody in the state of Florida, but it's very problematic for low-income folks that have a mental illness, not necessarily working, that are struggling and can't find a place to live. So actually, we had 2 issues that we were dealing with. One was housing. The other one was our physical space. So through partnership and collaborative networking with Carrefour Supportive Housing, which is where we were located on their bottom floor, but in a very small space, I kept going back to the CEO, Stephanie Berman, and saying, do you have another space? Can we have the people next door? Can we move the wall down? Looking for, just expanded space so we can help more people with mental illnesses. Our board was very involved. Amy, who's on the call, our board president, we were looking for space outside of the Carrefour building and trying to see if we can fund a building just so we can help people get help through the clubhouse. And actually, we wanted housing because we couldn't find housing for our folks. So after a couple of years, we were approached of looking, and it did take a good 2 years. We were approached by Carrefour Supportive Housing, and they wanted to write a grant to the Florida Housing Corporation to have a new building in a low-income area that had a community-based organization downstairs that helped people with mental illnesses. So the concept was a good one. We just didn't have the space. However, since we needed the housing, I talked to Stephanie, and I said it would really be helpful if we could have some of those apartments in the building. And so we came up with an agreement. We helped write our portion of the grant, and we were able to secure the grant through Carrefour Supportive Housing in a 5,000 square foot space on the bottom floor with a commercial kitchen, because we cook breakfast and lunch. The members do, people with mental illness. And we had 40 units that were secured for the Key Clubhouse to have priority residents. So we were very excited. This was a major success for us. And in the clubhouse world, there's 330 of us around the world, 200 in the United States. I believe we might be the only clubhouse in Miami, well, in the United States, that has a clubhouse actually on the bottom floor with apartments on the top. So when I was talking to Guinevere, I realized it was through our partnerships and networking that all of this was that we were able to put this together. And the space for somebody with a mental illness is extremely important. Our cultural philosophy is we treat people with respect and dignity. That means if we have housing, which is very important to us, we want it in a new space. We want it in a beautiful surroundings so their illness doesn't get worse. When you come into the clubhouse, we believe our cultural environment should be bright colors, plenty of space, new technology. We want our members to be treated like with dignity and respect. So there's a lot of discrimination out there as it relates to mental illness, and we don't feel that in the clubhouse community. So we want all of our members to come in and feel uplifted when they come to the clubhouse, go upstairs, have their own apartment. And what's great about this particular clubhouse, this key clubhouse, is that CAR4 is building the building for us. So we have to raise some funds to create the commercial kitchen because we, like I said, meals are very important to us. It's that's how we kind of gather, just like a family gathers around the dining room table. We gather at lunchtime and breakfast. So we're raising funds for the kitchen, for a communications unit, and Career Source of South Florida, which is a big partner of ours, and they put a lot of our members to work, is also sponsoring our business unit. So I think our building capacity has really been, if I had to put, just one reason why we've grown rapidly in the last 2 to 3 years is because of the partnering in the community.
Yeah. Thank you, Deborah. That's just amazing. And really the key clubhouse is getting at some of those persistent barriers, that remain over time to keep people from disabilities from working. And one of those is, of course, housing. And it's hard to get ready for work if you don't have a safe and adequate space to do that. So yeah, it's really important. And what Deborah's also really shown is that it takes time to grow those relationships and capacity build over time. So this has not been a quick trigger for them, but it has been an investment in relationships and networking over time to make this happen.
Thank you, Guinevere.
Deborah, when is the building going to be open? I know it's partially finished.
It's going up on the outside pretty quickly, but because of COVID, I think there's probably some delays in getting, certifications or whatever they have to do. I'm not a building person.
Yeah, the inspections.
Inspections. And so it's going up in terms of the outside structure. What we're told at this point is probably the apartments will be ready at the beginning of 2021. And then our clubhouse will be ready a couple months after that. So we're hoping, this time next year, we'll be in our new digs and the Able Trust will have to come down and visit.
I can't wait. I can't wait. All right. Thank you, Deborah, so much.
Okay.
So based on these are our pressing needs going forward to build and strengthen capacity. Based on the survey that you all responded to, these are the 4 areas of practice that hit at the top of everyone's mind as organizations are looking at their capacity plans. Staff training and skill building to be successful moving forward has leaned out a little bit ahead of everything else, but all 4 of these areas, communication, support services, staff training, fundraising, and volunteers, they're all at the top of everyone's list as either needing attention or leaning out to critical. And staff training and skill building, this makes sense. I think everyone that is recently stepped out of their average comfort zone to learn new skills and keep connected, keep working, keep engaged with clients and with businesses, and keep delivering the services during this time of lockdowns and remote working. It is important to acknowledge that your staff want to be successful at a time when work strategies have rapidly changed. And so how do we support their ability to do that? So supporting your staff and new skills, technology, and the know-how to be successful and operate in the new normal. For some of you that's on the call, this may be something that you want to start with there to bring up all of your staff to that level that they need to be successful in operating. So reflect on what this looks like at your organization. We will be opening up the discussion in just a few minutes to all of you to chime in on what you would like to share with your peers here on the call. What's working for your organization? What is a hurdle? What capacity growth commitments has your organization started? And we will begin that soon. And I wanted to share just a little bit. This was a pre-webinar question as well. And I'm going to share some of the responses that we got from you all that are on the call about what are some new programs or services that your organization has brought about recently. And these were some of the responses that we got, and I thought you all would like to see what these are, but some folks are looking at home smart assistants, the home automation systems. So we're working and living in our houses now. How can we tap in that smart house system? If your dexterity or your mobility is different, how can you address your living in your apartment and your space to be more automated? If that's going to make a real difference for you, living and working from your home for an extended period of time. So I thought that was quite interesting. This one I don't think comes as a surprise to everyone, but we are all in this bucket. More virtual services due to COVID-19. So how are we remaining connected together? And this is one of the ways that we are staying connected with folks and reaching out and beginning new relationships is virtually. And then take a look at some organizations have started virtual mental health counseling. There's been a lot of added stress with COVID-19. It is a unusual health time where health and safety are really at the forefront of everyone's mind, and also employment and how do we remain viable during these times. So virtual mental health counseling is a very common new capacity of organizations. And then remote internships. So trying to support students and young adults and frankly adults of any age in getting their foot in the door for employment. So how, for those organizations that had internship programs, how do they keep going during a time when everything is gone remote? So how do we shift internships into a remote environment? So it's been a really interesting experience for a lot of you to dive into that. And career camps, and there's a lot of workforce development camps for young adults, and what it means to have that experience. So for a lot of folks, the summer experience is going to be quite different than what they were planning on. Some of the first jobs that some of our young adults may have had in mind aren't necessarily happening. But how can we help them break into the workplace and learn the behavior that's going to promote them and give them confidence and success, that experience in the workplace? So career camps are also happening around the state. And emergency financial assistance. For quite a few of you, this was a service gap, and some of the clients really indicated that they needed assistance, and how could the organizations meet their clients' needs? And they were in a unique position, a lot of these organizations, the community provider organizations, to really know and have that trust relationship with their clients and really address some of the needs that clients may have been presenting. So emergency financial assistance was another new program that quite a few organizations have recently made available. So now we're going to get into the fun part here with our Q&A. And I know we've had some folks submit some questions, but you can also raise your hand and Allison will be unmuting your line, and you can share for a minute or two about what your organization is currently engaged in for capacity building. Or perhaps you want to share a current challenge and tap into the peers that are on here that can perhaps respond, if not live on the telephone, but into the Q&A, and we'll hopefully get you all connected. So Allison, do we have anyone with a raised hand?
We've had somebody ask a question that they want to hear from the group. The question is, can people share if they have IT services for training their clients on the computer and what those programs look like? And they're asking about both remote training programs or on-site. They're thinking about today and also the future. So if anybody has something that they'd like to share about their IT services training programs, if you could raise your hand and I could bring you off mute, that would be great.
So we are going to let people step up and do that. And Anthony, you might, from the CIL in Jacksonville, if you're still on the line, you may have a response to this as well, because this was tapping into the Microsoft experience that you were talking about.
I don't think that he's on the line anymore, but April.
He just raised his hand.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. Sorry, I missed him. Let me see. He did?
We will find him.
No, I don't think I have somebody else that's raised their hand.
Okay, let's hear.
But yeah. Okay, so Ellie Dupree.
Hi, Ellie.
Hello.
You may have to.
Ellie, you may
Hey.
have to.
I unmuted
there you are.
myself. Because,
Excellent.
you know, I run a consortium, so I'm not doing the direct service provision, but I know that the 17 member agencies, the Florida Agency Serving the Blind, have been doing extensive amount of IT training remotely, either using, like for example, Zoom, or they actually have been driving, for example, a tablet to a person's home, dropping it off at their front porch. The person brings it inside, and then they sit in their car. The teacher sits in the car, and they teach the class, and they pick up the laptop at the end of the class and they go home. So if people want more direct information, I can connect them with our members in our organization to give better
Super.
answers. But you can give my email if you want, or I can say it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it's E, and then the last name is B as in David, U, P as in Peter, R, E, at beyondvisionloss.org.
Thank you. You can add that into the chat too. So if you didn't catch
Oh
that.
yeah, I could do that.
Yeah. Super. Thank you, Ellie. And Ellie's been a big force around the state for quite a few years, and I really appreciate you coming online today and sharing that with us. And I know the lighthouses and the consortium are working really hard during this time to bring more services to people in the communities that they are. So yeah, dropping off a laptop or a tablet on someone's front door and conducting a session right then and there. Kudos to the staff that are working out of their car. That would be a little bit warm in Florida during the summer, but my hat is off to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have Rob Brazel that has raised his hand, and also Anthony is on the call. So Anthony, I will bring you off of mute after Rob.
Good afternoon, Rob. How are you?
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. R2W has been providing STEM internships to students in high school and college for several years. Excuse me. We've been utilizing a variety of technology to connect with those students, including Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Teams, etc. Those tools are very useful, enabling us to not only listen to intonation, but to read body language and determine when the students are genuinely interested, when they're being motivated. We also utilize advanced technologies to figure out specific tasks that we know will motivate them in the science, technology, engineering, and math fields. And we would love to figure out ways to network with other people, other organizations in providing these services to students around the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, so much for sharing. I appreciate you coming online today. And Allison, do we have Anthony as well, you said?
Yes, I'm going to bring Anthony off mute now. Anthony, you may need to unmute yourself on your side.
I'm sorry, I'm new to the program.
Oh, you're doing great.
I've been
Great.
over here pounding keys. I just couldn't figure it out. Well, I think the question you guys had asked was about what our online programs look like, and the Microsoft one is the probably the best one to illustrate that. The long and short of it is that just like we're on this Zoom call, the Microsoft has a Teams platform. They choose to use that for a lot of different reasons, but it's not unlike the format we're using right now. As it relates to the curriculum, we understood that Microsoft already had in place a lot of programs that they were trying to teach people. They weren't really none of them were exactly what we were looking for. So what we did was we took parts of multiple programs that they had available, and we kind of created our own specifically designed program. An example of that is last week's online training was titled Accessibility. And really the entire presentation was about accessibility tools that are already built into Microsoft Office and any Microsoft program that help vision, hearing. There are multiple of them. So at a minimum, we wanted to start with these things are already available and already exist. So let's kind of learn to use them. They teach multiple other classes that we like to see, because we believe that we want our people to be able to be proficient with the Office tools, because that's quite a resume builder, and to actually be proficient opens up doors. So they do specific trainings on their Office products. The one before accessibility was spreadsheets. They have, so that's kind of what it looks like. At the end of the day, if you just went online to Microsoft and looked at training, you might not be super excited about all of the programs, because they aren't really, not really customized exactly to what our population needs. However, a little collaboration and kind of carving out some of the parts of various programs and making our own program that is relevant to our population was what we tried to do and what we feel like is most effective. Does that satisfy the question?
It does. Thank you so much for sharing. I do appreciate that. We had someone else recently just submit a question, and that was, how can I get more volunteers to help us given the coronavirus restrictions? So have folks tapped into Volunteer Network? Have you reached out and connected with additional volunteers? How are you making new volunteer relationships, or perhaps reviving previous relationships? So give that a thought and see if we can do that. And also, Anthony, can you in the chat share your information about how folks might contact you and connect for some follow-up? I think some people are looking for your email, so that would be really good. So Allison,
So Guinevere, we've got three people with their hands raised.
Okay.
Ileana Demoya, I'm going to bring you off of mute. You might have to also unmute yourself on your side.
Good afternoon, Ileana.
Good afternoon. Can you hear
There
me?
you are. Yes, thank you.
Awesome. I did it right.
You did.
I am the CEO and founder of DMF Employment Opportunities. We serve Miami-Dade County, and we're an employment provider for young adults with developmental disabilities from the ages of 18 to 35. We have a very unique approach to employment, and our model is quite different from the VR model, but I can send that information out at another time. What I wanted to share with you is what we've been able to do as far as with COVID and technology. So we developed a Google Classroom, And we have all kinds of classes that our job coaches have developed, and we have taken our employees and helped them register onto the Google Classroom. And we offer anything from office skills to financial management to bingo night to workout sessions. And so there's a whole slew of classes that they can access if they're not working or if they're working remotely. We have cohorts for the ones who are not employed at the time and have lost their jobs, which thankfully is not a majority, but it is still quite a few of our clients that are sitting at home because they have been sent home. One of the things technology-wise that we have that I'd like to share, if you don't know, is that TechSoup offers Excel and Word for free. And so what we did was we went on there and we used it for some of our higher functioning young adults, but then and they get a certificate, which we felt was really important because some of them were getting paid and they weren't working. And so we wanted them to have something to take back to their employers when they went back to work to say, okay, thank you for paying me and I've learned a new skill. So we did that, but then it was a little challenging for our moderate level. And so we took it and we made our own module out of it. And we are doing that in small cohorts through the Google Classroom. The other thing is that, excuse me, I'm sorry, it's myself.
It's okay.
The other thing that we did was there's, which we just learned about, there's something, I don't know how many people know about it, but it's called Tech First Initiative. And I was on a webinar the other day through APSE, and they, we took our job coaches and we gave each of them, I'm sorry, a group of apps to research to see which ones would be beneficial to our employees. I hope you guys all understand it's my mother and she will not.
I have a mother just like that.
I mean, any minute now my office line will also ring. So we split it up and we gave them all, you know, like 6 apps to research to see which ones would benefit the young adults that we work with. And that has been very beneficial also. Somebody mentioned about dropping off. We were able to get some funds and buy laptops and iPads. And we are able to go right there, drop it off at their door. And then we go back to the office and we do virtual coaching through and get them registered and onto Zoom. We're using Google Meet, which we find has less issues because not so many people are using it. I'd be glad to send anybody any of the information if you didn't know about it that I just shared with you. And we also took our Google classes and we created a YouTube channel. And so the classes that our job coaches are teaching are now recorded and they're on YouTube. And if you look up the Des Moines Foundation, because that's our umbrella, you can see YouTube channels on classes for young adults with developmental disabilities, making pizza toast, cooking, other recipes that are nice and simple, but also office skills, filing. I can't remember all of them, but we already have probably 12 tutorials on there, and they're very specific for young adults with developmental disabilities.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And yes, share with us some information. And folks, if you're interested in connecting with Liliana, you can find, I think she introduced herself on the chat, so you can connect with her there. Allison, I think we have time for one more raised hand.
Yep, we have Jody Ellis. Jody, I'm going to take you off.
I'm sorry, am I still muted?
No, you are not muted.
Okay, I just want to know what you want me to do. How do I share the information on the chat?
You can share your email on the chat if you'd like, or the best way to get in contact with you. But please also send that information to us. So on screen, you should say our email, info@abletrust.org. We'd love to receive that and get that back out. So we will be doing a highlights summary of all the resources shared here, both by our callers that we've unmuted, but also what people have shared in the Q&A, and we'd love to include that.
So Guinevere, we have Jody Ellis.
Jody.
Hi, everyone. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being on.
Yeah, so I wanted to share how we used volunteers during this time. We put out a social media post for virtual volunteers. So we had, some cute posts and pictures put out. And we have a business advisory council, and we really engaged a lot of our members to virtually volunteer during this time. We also have an affiliation with a local university where some of the student interns volunteer with us during the school year, but we use the students and actually 2 faculty members as well to help with virtual volunteers during this time. And mostly the volunteers were used to do mock interviewing sessions with our participants. And we had a few waiver support coordinators that signed up to volunteer, but it was really a great way for us to engage the community. Business members really felt involved and connected during this time, and it gave our job seekers some really great experience with interviewing.
Perfect. Yeah, and reaching out to volunteers is a really big way of building capacity to have additional folks to really lead the way on tackling some of the issues. So I appreciate that. I know there were more raised hands. We're out of time, but we still would like to hear from you. So everyone that had their hand raised, please do connect with us at info@abletrust.org. We'd love to connect with what you wanted to share, and we hope to put that out on the highlight summary and really share it with your peers here on the call. So I have one more slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to Allison. Let's see. Well, there we go. So this word cloud was made by your responses in that pre-webinar survey to what is success? What are the attributes of success? And our ultimate measure of organizational success really comes in what is happening to our individual participants and their success. So responses to this question received in the survey, the large words here were words that we had in common. So training, networking, technology, and support are big drivers of success. And then there are some smaller words scattered here that may be small but have big impact. And they're signals about the attributes of a person. So how do we foster these with the people that we are working with? Some of the smaller words that you might see there are consistency, confidence, perseverance, willingness. And then there are attributes of opportunity. How do we foster these opportunities? Experience drives development. Experiences drive such things as independence, getting involved, problem solving, choice, and participation. Those are some other really small words that are sprinkled in here. Things like resilience. These are really important for individuals to gain success. Organizational capacity will create opportunities for success for all involved, and now is the time to meet our future head on, lay the groundwork for individual success next year and the year after. I'm going to close it here and hand it back to Allison, but I do want to say that I've enjoyed the sharing that went on with our callers this afternoon. All of you that chimed in with your raised hands and your Q&A and the chat box, I really appreciate that. And if we didn't get to your question or comment, please reach out to us at info@abletrust.org. We would love to connect. So Allison?
Yes, so thank you, Guinevere, and thank you to everybody that participated this afternoon. What a great conversation. And I want to say particular thanks to Anthony, Tony, and Deborah who contributed to the presentation, and all of the people who answered questions and posed questions. As Guinevere said, unfortunately, we ran out of time before we could get to all of the questions, but we will be following up with you. If you raised your hand and we didn't get to you, please make sure to send us your question at info@abletrust.org. Your input is really important to driving our conversation and our future content. We will be sending out a feedback survey early next week to all of the participants on today's event. Please make sure that you respond to that, because it really is important for us to hear from you about what you're having success with, but also what challenges you might still be facing that we can have a conversation about and brainstorm and problem solve and hopefully come together as we navigate through this new world.
Allison, you want to advance the slide there?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, of course I do. Sorry about that. So I just have a couple of announcements before we go. We want to clue you into some upcoming events, some resources, and we have a special request. So today here on the screen, you will see a piece, a recent PR piece that on the Able Trust and highlighting workers with disabilities through the pandemic. This picture here is Melissa Lewis. She is a graduate from our high school high-tech program in Alachua County. Some of you may know her. She works as an RN in Palm Coast and has worked in the IC unit through the pandemic, and we're extremely proud of her. You can find this piece in the online and the print versions of Florida Trend magazine. As a part of this piece, there is a download hiring tip sheets for employers that we invite you to share with your business partners. We have been asked by the Florida Department of Transportation to help collect input on challenges that Florida providers such as yourselves and the consumers that you serve are experiencing with transportation in the state. So what we'd like to ask for you and encourage you to submit any comments and suggestions that you have to us that we can pass along to the Department of Transportation. And again, those can go to info@abletrust.org. One thing of note, make sure that you add us to your safe senders list in your email. Add info@abletrust.org to your safe senders list so that our emails won't go into your junk box. A copy of today's presentation will be posted on the Able Trust website next week, and we will also be sending a link to that to you through an email. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter @AbleTrust to stay up to date on all of our work. We have some other webinars that we will be doing later this summer, and we'll be posting those on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also through email postings. So finally, I want to say thank you so much to everyone that joined us this afternoon. It's been a really great conversation, and the information that we learn from each other drives the work that we have ahead of us. Remember, if we didn't get to your question today, we still want to engage with you. So we will definitely reach out and continue the conversation, but don't wait for us. Always know that we're available at info@abletrust.org. So on behalf of everyone at the Able Trust, I want to say thank you for joining us and have a great afternoon.